Racing Network, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here from the Kansas Speedway. All right, we thank Jason Toy. He is headed back to the truck. He'll high-five Dave Moody, who is on the property and headed over to the Cup Series garage. He will join Steve Post over there. My name is Jeff Striegel. Alongside is Alex Hayden. Coming up next, NASCAR Cup Series practice from Kansas Speedway. This is the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN.com and Motor Racing Network's Facebook. Join me, Kyle Rickey, and Hannah Newhouse as we talk with the next generation of NASCAR stars and established local and regional racers each Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time. Or subscribe, download, and listen on your favorite podcast provider. NASCAR Coast to Coast. Grassroots NASCAR racing from the Motor Racing Network.
You hear it every week.
Just want to thank the whole team and all our guys back in Denver. Everybody supports this team.
They're the unsung heroes of NASCAR, and their life is the pits. This is Rocco Williams, and for 10 years, I've jacked up some of the biggest names in auto racing, and now I'm jacked to bring it all down to street level and acquaint you with the guys behind the wall and back at the shop. Join me on MRN Crew Call, presented by Money Lion, every Wednesday on MRN.com, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found.
From Kansas Speedway, this is Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome back. Kansas Speedway, that's home to the Motor Racing Network and NASCAR this weekend. A doubleheader for us with the trucks running tonight, the Cup Series running the digital Ally 400 here at Kansas tomorrow. And as I say that, here they come pouring out of the garage and headed out onto pit road. William Byron, Joey Logano, Truex, Alex Bowman, everybody making their way out of the garage, which is being monitored down there by Steve Post and Dave Moody. We'll get to them in a moment. Jeff Striegel, Alex Hayden, topside here at the Kansas Speedway as we get ready to pick up, is it simple to say, the Martin Truex Show?
As of
Chapter 3?
As of late, it certainly is, after picking up his first career short track win back at the Richmond Raceway and then backing it up with another win at the Monster Mile last week in Dover, Delaware. Martin Truex Jr., his crew chief Cole Pern, coming over from Furniture Row Racing after that team shut its doors at the conclusion of last year. Took them a little while to find their comfort level at Joe Gibbs Racing. Coming from the shops out in Denver, Colorado, where there was, 85, 90 employees, going now to 500-600 employees at Joe Gibbs Racing in North Carolina, it took them some time. They had to wear name tags, and everybody else had to wear name tags. Got to figure out who everybody is, but things have certainly begun to fall into place for Martin Truex Jr., and I'm going to use that old pun in racing. He's hitting on all 8 cylinders.
Yeah, he is. That's for sure. He flat whipped them a week ago on the Monster Mile. By the way, we always invite you to interact with us. NASCAR.com, MRN.com. That's how you're joining us today. By the way, if you are on NASCAR.com, you are picking up the video feed from here at the Kansas Speedway. So MRN has the audio coverage. NASCAR.com has audio and video. And so that brings us to the question of the day, Alex Hayden. We are going to be, at the conclusion of tomorrow night, 1/3 of the way through the 2019 season. If you had to, today, pick the 4 drivers that would compete for a championship in Homestead in November, who would they be? How do they interact with us?
Well, go to Twitter. Go to the Motor Racing Network Twitter page, @MRN Radio. Interact with us. Give us your responses and perhaps a thought or two, and use the hashtag AskMRN. They can go to your Twitter feed as well, at
Jeff Striegel.
Or mine, at the Alex Hayden. So we've got it all out there. Interact with us. Who knows? We'll read your tweet over the air. If you've listened to our coverage in the past, we absolutely do it, and interact with you, the race fans, because this is all being done for you, the race fan out there. So we'll give our thoughts on who we may think may be in the championship for come Homestead Miami Speedway and Ford Championship weekend. We'll do that here in just a little bit.
I have 2 that are absolutely locked. I'm still debating on my other two. And Alex will weigh in, I'll weigh in, Steve's going to weigh in. Dave Moody will weigh in. Also, field beginning to roll off the end of pit road, and practice session number 1 here is underway. Back downstairs now into the garage for the first time, although, Steve, you've been with us all morning long. You just found a new place to hide out.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cup garage is where we're at down here. And the Cup drivers, well, probably half of them have left the garage, and then there's another half in the garage. Watching right now, Kurt Busch sits aboard the Global Poker car, just waiting for the signal from Matt McCall to go out on the racetrack. As a matter of fact, fires it up and gets ready to go out onto the speedway as well. Kevin Harvick has fired up his machine. He's just pulling out now. There's Kyle Busch just climbing aboard his car. So various stages of readiness. Looks like most of the other cars are out on the racetrack already getting laps in here this morning. So getting a lot going on here today. This is a very busy day because all of the practice we have is here today for tomorrow night's race. So we've got an hour now and 50 minutes now, 50 minutes later. It's what the game plan is that these drivers and crews are working on right now. But most of the game plan is getting as much track time as possible, and the bulk of the cars are already out on the speedway.
Easily the bulk of the cars. There's a lot of them making the way around this 1.5-mile D-shaped oval. Quite a few of them made a lap, came down pit road trying to set their digital dashboard tachometers to figure out exactly where they need to be in second gear for pit road speed for the race tomorrow, or tomorrow night, I should say. Austin Dillon, on his very first lap out there, put down a heck of a lap. Fantastic lap for Austin Dillon. He's the fastest, over 174 miles per hour. A lot of the cars down there, matter of fact, every one of the Cup cars, same with the Gander Outdoors Truck Series, most all of them have the same decal. Others have put bigger decals on their race vehicles, honoring Mooresville, North Carolina police officer, a K-9 officer, Officer Sheldon, who was gunned down, cowardly gunned down, and lost his life in that just routine, everyday traffic stop. It was senseless out there. As a matter of fact, if you're watching NASCAR.com, you see that right now. K-9 officer Jordan Sheldon, town of Mooresville, North Carolina, Lake Norman. It's important because every one of these NASCAR teams, whether it's the Gander Outdoors Truck Series, these Monster Energy Cup cars, even the Xfinity Series, they're based in and around the Mooresville, North Carolina area, and it's never a good thing. But when a tragedy like that hits so very close to home, a lot of these race team mechanics and support personnel knew Officer Sheldon personally. It really kind of catches you and really takes your breath away just a little bit on how sad that really is as far as a tragedy. But nice to see the NASCAR community coming together and everybody running Officer Sheldon decals.
You brought that up last week in the booth, and Rusty Wallace had not heard about it yet. And he said, "Oh my gosh, who was it?" And Alex, you pulled up a picture and said, "I think my son and I know this young man." Certainly his son, Stephen Wallace, because he made the comment that they're all friends. And so we certainly do send thoughts and prayers to the family and appreciate what they're doing down there in the garage. Just getting to the garage after just landing here, a quick flight from North Carolina to here in Kansas is Dave Moody. Dave, I know you're going to be scratching your head on your Championship 4. I won't take you there yet. But first of all, welcome to Kansas, and what you got your eye on down there?
Well, we're just kind of watching it all happen down here in the early going, Jeff. A couple of the cars in this area of the garage, Kevin Harvick most notably, were a little later than others going out. Some of them got out very promptly and are now back in, going over the notes and making some changes. The Denny Hamlin machine has just come back in. The Martin Truex Jr. Toyota has just come back into the garage, going up on 4 jack stands. And as you might expect, they've got somebody either on top of or underneath this car on just about every corner. It is a perfect day for racing here at Kansas Speedway. A little bit on the cool side, mid to high 50s about where we're going to get today, or at least where we are at the moment. A little bit of a breeze as well, but that'll make plenty of horsepower on these cars. Some sunshine to get this track good and warm, so the tires will get a little greasy, just the way the drivers like it. So we'll see what they've got to say here as this practice session rolls on.
Thank you, Dave. It's an important practice session to get things underway. And Aric Almirola has put down the fastest lap so far, 176.678 miles per hour, .564 seconds to make his way around this 1.5 mile Kansas Speedway. It is a couple of Stewart-Haas Racing Ford Mustangs leading the way. Almirola the fastest, Kevin Harvick second quick, Erik Jones, Daniel Suarez, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. That is the Fast Five at the moment. Positions 6 through 10 early on in this opening practice session. We'll see Austin Dillon, Brad Keselowski, Matt DiBenedetto, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Preece. Yep, both the JTG Doherty cars are inside the top 10 right now as we just get underway in our opening practice of the weekend for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. We'll step away, grab a quick break from Kansas Speedway. This is the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Hey guys, it's Dylan Welch. He's Tyler Burnett. We're the co-hosts of the Rip the Fence podcast. If you like traditional non-wing dirt track racing, we've got the podcast for you.
Shane Meal trying to drive away.
I can't do everything, but I could do anything and everything I wanted before I got injured. So
just like many of the great podcasts going, we invite racers in to talk, and they tell us their life story.
And it's how I feel that matters.
It's the Rip the Fence podcast, available on MRN.com and your favorite podcast app.
Check out MRN.com for a new podcast series called The Tough Trucks of NASCAR. 25 years and still trucking. We'll take you back to some great races.
Benson to the bottom of the racetrack. This is the race for the lead and the win at Michigan.
And some wild moments.
One truck is in the air. Matt Crafton upside down.
And we'll let you hear the stories behind them.
He was too bullheaded to let me pass him, and I was too bullheaded to let him have it.
Download the show for free on iTunes and at MRN.com. From Kansas Speedway in Kansas City, this is Cup Series practice.
Once again, the cream of the crop. He's about to take another trip to Gatorade Victory Lane.
The march to Miami continues for Martin Truex Jr. Win number 7. It comes today here at Kansas Speedway.
Now, back to Jeff Striegel and Alex Hayden.
Martin Truex Jr., the fall race here at Kansas Speedway. A couple of years ago, 2017, going to Gatorade Victory Lane. Martin Truex Jr. has put 2 laps on the board here in the opening 7 or so minutes of this first practice of the day for the Cup cars, only able to get himself in the 19th position on speed as of now.
Don't forget you can weigh in with us and tell you who you think will be the Final Four Ford Championship weekend in November. If you had to put money down on 4 drivers right now, who would they be? And I think there's a trend going or growing or both, and that is I'm going to take 2 drivers from Team Penske and I'm going to take 2 drivers from Joe Gibbs Racing. It is all Kyle Busch and Truex. It is all Logano and Keselowski with a sprinkle of Kevin Harvick or other in there. Hard to dispute that. And, you know, you and I have had this, and we'll let the boys downstairs weigh in on this as well. If we go back 5 weeks ago, we said, best team in the Cup garage. And you and I said, you know, maybe 51-49, it's this one over that one. I think personally that it's growing, that right now it's probably 80 Gibbs, 20 Penske. I know that you are anxiously waiting to debate me on that. You do not agree that I think right now the dominant, by far and away, team in the garage is Joe Gibbs Racing.
I would say, I'll give you your due, they appear to be on the surface right now. And take no mistake about this, Joe Gibbs Racing's fantastic. They're a great race team. But Joey Logano won the championship a year ago for Team Penske, and he used this exact same formula which is going on right now. And they went out and they've got a win early on in the season last year. Then they went into, we can make our cars better, because we have got to win a championship. And the way you win a championship is to be good in those last 10 races, specifically the last handful of races leading right up to Ford Championship weekend. And where, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm having a little memory problem, Jeff. Where was Joey Logano the best last year?
At Homestead.
Okay, yeah, so that's the formula that they used a year ago, and it was successful. They won the championship. I see that same thing happening now. Both Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano have wins under their belt. They're in the playoffs already. It's time now to figure out how to make their cars the best they can be and crescendo and peak at the right time.
Oh, boy. All right, so before we get Moody to weigh in on this, and Postman, what you're saying then is that if they wanted to, they could do something different, not R&D wise, show up at the racetrack and beat Kyle and beat Truex. Yes or no?
No, I'm not. There's more to yes or no in that, because to me, they're not throwing away races. And I'm not saying they're sitting out here doing research and development. They are trying fine-tuned things. This is Roger Penske. This is the captain. This is NASCAR Hall of Fame team owner Roger Penske. He is tried and true. He knows how to win races. He knows how to win championships. There are minor things that I would say that, yeah, they're trying some things out there to make their cars faster. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, they're not off by a lot. They are off by a hair. So you can put it in the it didn't work category. I still think they're going to win races throughout the regular season, if you will, going into the playoffs. They're that good of a race team, even if they're trying something a little bit different. These two teams, including Ryan Blaney, they're good enough to win races, and they will.
Okay, it's a theory that Alex Hayden has. What about the theory that perhaps Moody and Postman would like to weigh in on the other side of the, on the other side of the truck where the Gibbs trailers are, if you will? I think, Dave Moody, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the formula that Truex showed a year ago, which is go out and win every possible event you can, pile up the stage points and the playoff points, is probably the same theory that they're going to use in 2019. And oh, by the way, they have now won the last 2 out of the 3 races.
Well, that's exactly right, Jeff. And looking at the big picture here, I believe that Alex is exactly right about this. And perhaps more importantly, I believe that you are exactly wrong, because
wait, well, hold on. What?
Yeah. Thank you, David. Be a little something extra in your Easter basket next year.
You're welcome. And I'll even help out by explaining why, because we've all been around here for a long time. I have yet to see a championship trophy handed out in the middle of May. Being hot right now is a wonderful thing. If you're Martin Truex Jr., you're doing exactly what you want to do. He's won 2 out of the last 3. He's putting together stage points. He's putting together bonus points. He's doing everything you could ask of a race car driver and a race team. And winning races is never a bad thing. But as Joey Logano showed us last year, as Tyler Reddick showed us in the Xfinity Series last year, being hot in May may be fun, but it doesn't pay off like being hot in October and November. So right now, I don't think there's any doubt that Joe Gibbs Racing is the cream of the crop. But I like where Team Penske is right now. I'm not even remotely panicking about Stewart-Haas Racing, because if you look at Kevin Harvick, he's 4th in the championship standings right now, ahead of a couple of guys that have won races, ahead of a couple of guys that have won multiple races this year. So the time to run up the white flag of panic is far, far away. I think this one is still really wide open.
I think Dave makes a lot of sense on that. And Dave,
of course you do.
I always do.
Of course you do.
And Martin Truex Jr., there's no denying that a couple of years ago they wanted to go out, win every stage, amass every bonus point, every point they could possibly get to put themselves in the best position possible come playoffs. And to have Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pearn, yeah, Dave, they had their technical alliance with Furniture Row Racing with Gibbs, but now that they're actually in Huntersville, North Carolina, at Joe Gibbs Racing, is it safe to say that they're finding their comfort level?
All right, we'll follow up with Dave here in just a moment, who we can actually see is standing inside that 19 garage. So we'll catch up with Dave here in a minute. By the way, don't forget you can weigh in, hashtag AskMRN on Twitter, at MRN Radio, at _Smith Matthew weighed in. He disagrees with all of you. He said Busch, Truex, Larson, and Chase Elliott. No Team Penske driver listed, although I don't agree with that. It is an interesting way to go about it. Steve Post, help us out here. Kyle Busch is one of those guys where you better bring the absolute best piece of equipment to the track tonight, Or I'm guessing Kyle Busch would say, I ain't driving it. What do you think?
Well, he'll drive it, but he won't be happy driving it.
There you go.
Because he'll drive anything, as he's shown us. But yeah, Kyle Busch is one of those drivers that is certainly in our big conversation as far as the championship battle, in our Gibbs conversation because he's been so good this year. And well, he's in our conversation as far as today's practice session goes. He went out and he completed a quick qualifying run, and it was not good at all. 31st fastest. So they've been working, making wholesale changes on the car as well. Kyle just brought the M&M's car back in. It is the traditional yellow and red M&M scheme. It's a good-looking race car each and every time. Here's the thing with Kyle Busch when we look at it. They're working on this race car. They're trying to make it better here at Kansas Speedway today. But when you look at this paint scheme, above the door it says Kyle Busch. And a little bit down on the roof of the car, there is 1, 2, 3 winner's stickers on this car. So, yeah, Kyle Busch is all about winning, and he has won 3 times this year. As a matter of fact, how good has Kyle Busch been? He has been in the top 10 in every race this year. So I don't think there's any reason for panic here in the Kyle Busch camp today, with a little slow on the first run and a little panic as we roll out into this race weekend. Just brought the car in again, and they're putting it up on jack stands. Going to do some changes on the automobile. Adam Stevens, the crew chief, talking to Kyle now. Kyle sits aboard the wheel, or behind the wheel of the race car, aboard the car, finger on the button, talking to his crew chief. Crew chief taking notes. Engineer taking notes. Here's one of the other things that I find interesting about what happens here in the garage area for this practice session. He went out and he did that first run, and watching the engineers on the computers up front, they punched on their screen, and there was at least 100 photos of their car from their practice laps. What the manufacturers, Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford now do is they hire photographers and they instantly send pictures of the car in. So one of the things that Adam Stevens has as a tool here, and now as a matter of fact, he's looking at some pictures now as a matter of fact, one of the things they have as a tool here is to see how the car looked at every aspect of the corner. You match that up with what Kyle's saying about the car, and you make those adjustments accordingly. So that's what they're doing. They're in the adjustment phase here. No worries down here with Kyle Busch. He's awful good at this racetrack. He won here a couple of years ago, finished second here in the fall, and no reason to believe that he's not going to be pretty stout when we roll out for 400 miles here tomorrow night.
You know, Kyle Busch is an interesting guy because, as Steve was reporting there, yeah, he'll drive it. He may not like it. He was very adamant after the race at Dover last week that he didn't like it. But then again, he wasn't very good there. However, coming from the exact same race shop was the race-winning car in Martin Truex Jr. So it comes down to individual preference as a driver and what you like to feel as a race car driver. Clearly, Truex didn't mind the feel of his race car. Kyle, from the opening practice to the checkered flag of the race.
See, hold on, I'm going to stop you right there.
Oh, yeah.
You just made an assumption there that I don't think is fair in the fact that you said Truex liked his car. We don't know if Truex liked his car. He had a car that won, no debate.
Fair.
But that's where I think we're, and I appreciate that part, but that's where I think we're making the mistake with Kyle. And that is the fact that we think that Kyle's going to throw a temper tantrum every time he doesn't win, when in fact I think he's just trying to tell, you got to believe Kyle. If you don't believe Kyle, then what I'm saying makes no difference to anybody, that win or lose, he doesn't like the car that he's driving. He has said it from the very beginning. You made the comment, we were talking, you and I, last night. He said it after he drove it the very first time. I don't like this package. He's already won 3 times. He still doesn't like it. And I think, and Dave, you're welcome to weigh in on this, I think he's just trying to say to NASCAR or to the world that win or lose, I get what we have. I'm just telling you that I don't like it, and it's because of these reasons.
Well, you're right. The bully pulpit in NASCAR is victory lane. That's where people are all tuned in and listening. That's where you get to speak and everybody else has to listen. And Kyle Busch has used that bully pulpit on a number of occasions already this year to express his unhappiness with the program. Now, we all know Kyle well enough to know he may be unhappy every single week, but he's a little less unhappy in victory lane than he is when he finishes 10th or 11th like he did last weekend. That's just the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of being competitive the way these guys are. But Kyle Busch, no, he's not a big fan of the program right now, but it's not keeping him from winning races. Same thing can be said for Martin Truex Jr. This team, They weren't far off at the beginning of the season, despite all the talk you heard about what's wrong with MTJ, why haven't they not adapted to going to Joe Gibbs Racing. They weren't far off, and in this business, you don't have to be far off to be far off, and they found it. They got their first short track win about 3 weeks ago, followed that up with a dominant performance on the Monster Mile last Monday afternoon. More than 9.5 seconds margin of victory. Just for reference, 9.5 seconds is more than the margin of victory for the first 10 races of this season combined. So MTJ took them to the woodshed last weekend. They're only 24th fastest on the speed charts after everybody got their first run of the day in here in Kansas. Not a lot of panic for sure. They're making some changes. The car's just come back in off his second run of the day, immediately up on 4 jack stands. They're going to get some information, do a little download, get some information from the driver, and see if they can push him a little further up the pylon here in run number 3.
Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, right now, good race cars, and obviously Truex riding a bit of a momentum streak after winning at Richmond and winning last week at Dover. Kyle Busch, yeah, he's already won this year multiple times, and if he can finish in the top 10 here tomorrow night, Kyle Busch will break a record for the most top 10 finishes to start a season in NASCAR Premier Series history. That's something to certainly be proud of. He'd prefer to win every one of these races, but that's Kyle Busch. But Jeff, you said something a while ago, and Dave chimed in, Steve's chimed in on this as well. Kyle Busch didn't like it, and maybe he's making a broader statement he doesn't like the package. Well, if you don't run well with something, no, you're not going to like it. But if somebody else is running well, why would the guy who's not running well speak for me? I mean, you like to golf. There are certain golf courses you play extremely well.
Right.
There are some golf courses that you don't play well. Which ones do you prefer to play? The ones you play well at, right? And then you can kind of whittle it down before you jump in and say, but Kyle's talking about the equipment package. There are some sets of clubs that really fit your game better than other sets of clubs when you have to rent them. And if you don't like that particular set of clubs, even if it's your favorite course, you're going to want to go someplace else and get another set of clubs. I've seen you do it. I've been there.
First of all, I don't rent my clubs, but thank you for putting me in that category. I think that's a bad analogy. I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. Because it is the clubs that we're talking about here and not the course. If you follow what I'm saying about that, and that is we're talking about the car, your course reference would be around the tracks. I honestly think that Kyle Busch is trying to make a statement to anybody who will listen, and that is we brought something to the track that is not the right thing in his mind for the sport. Whether he's right or wrong is the great debate, right?
Right.
And if he goes out, I would tell you this, if he wins tomorrow night in the Digital Ally 400 at Kansas, he will still not like the package that he's driving. I think that goes without saying. All right, you're welcome to weigh in on any of what we're talking about, and you're nodding with, yeah, they are. Absolutely weigh in. You can go to our Twitter feed, MRN, at MRN Radio on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskMRN and weigh in. Do you agree, disagree? You want to talk to Moody or Postman? Do whatever you want. We'll tee you up when we come back. From Kansas Speedway, this is the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Clutch Coffee Bar in Mooresville, North Carolina is redefining the drive-thru coffee game in Race City, USA. The Clutch experience is fast, friendly, and delicious. Quality drinks and unmatched customer service is the name of the game. Clutch Coffee Bar offers signature lattes and mochas, custom flavor-infused energy drinks, smoothies, and more. Over 25 flavors, there's something for everyone. Visit our 2 locations in Mooresville, 356 Williamson Road and 154 West Plaza Drive. Open daily from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Power up today with Clutch Coffee Bar.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice, Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength.
From the sunflower state of Kansas, this is Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice.
Still up to speed off turn number 4, still with about 3 seconds in front of Dale Earnhardt Jr. He'll do it. He'll cross the line, milking it right to the last lap. Brad Keselowski, after winning the last time in April of 2009, 75 races ago, he'll win today at Kansas Speedway in the STP 400.
Now, back to Jeff Striegel and Alex Hayden.
2011, Brad Keselowski being called there to the stripe by Motor Racing Network's Joe Moore. Across the line comes Brad, and he will actually jump that Ford all the way up to 9th. He had been well outside of the top 15, literally until a moment ago. His teammates also running in the top 10. Logano 5th quick, Ryan Blaney 4th quick. Some of you are weighing in. I like this one before we switch gears and talk about Ford. Alex, a longtime listener and a very good fan of ours, at Katie Courier, says, for me, I am still not giving up hope on the Chevy drivers. Why would you? They're starting to make hay now. My championship 4 are Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and Jimmy Johnson. I think that's a stretch, but okay, that's their opinion. I know the 48 team has a lot of work to do, but I have hope that they're going to turn the program around. #AskMRN. Obviously a Chevy fan and certainly a Hendrick Motorsports fan, hoping that 3 of those 4 drivers make it to the championship 4.
Yeah, we had some other fans that are chiming in at DSMREKAR26. That's Devin Smraker. Forgive me if I apologize or if I said that wrong, pronounced it wrong. They've got the 22 of Logano, the 2 of Keselowski, 2 Team Penske's there. They got Kyle Busch going to the championship 4 and Chase Elliott going to the championship 4 as well. Liam Sheen at L Sheen 51 says you never know who can hit their stride later on. Hendrick isn't out of the picture, neither is Chip Ganassi Racing.
And I will weigh in on one more, although this is off topic, but I think when I find support, I'm going to give it to you, Alex Hayden. I'm probably going to get the name wrong, but Bonsa, at Bonsa_T, says you, Jeff Striegel, are 100% right about, are you listening, Alex?
Yeah.
About Kyle Busch disliking the package from the start, no matter where he's at or where he finishes.
I just threw up in my mouth just a little bit.
A little bit. All right. You know what? And 2, I'm going to give you, I think a lot of us have Kyle Busch and Truex in our picks. Not all, I'm sure. But I think that, Steve Post, don't you think that if Truex and Kyle have any hopes of winning a championship, it would be their second apiece if one of them were to win. They are going to have to compete against members from Team Penske. Now, what members there will be, we'll have to wait and find out. But what about Ryan Blaney? I think we talk a lot about Keselowski. We talk a lot about Logano. But how soon will it be before we start talking about that other Team Penske driver that drives the 12 car?
Well, he's been solid this year. I mean, it's not been a disaster, but he hasn't got the win. And I think that's where the line is drawn when we look at these drivers that we consider here with Team Penske along the way. When we look at Ryan Blaney's numbers, his problem has been consistency. Okay, the last 2 weeks he's had 15th place finishes. Prior to that was 25th. But then listen to this. He was 4th before that, 37th, 4th, 5th, 3rd. Okay, he's been pretty good along the way, but not great. Not up there when you're finishing 15th on a regular basis and occasionally jumping up there to 3rd and 4th. You're not putting yourself in position to win on a regular basis. And I think that's where Ryan Blaney and Jeremy Bullins and this Team Penske team need to get a little bit better. And I think that's what they're working on when we look here at Kansas. Now, his best finish was a 3rd place finish here in the fall race of 2017. He's raced here 8 times, so time to start showing off what you've learned here along the way for young Ryan Blaney. And thus far in this practice session, I think they're showing off pretty well. He's ran about 12 laps in this practice session, and he reported early on that the car was a little bit free down in the corner, meaning the rear end wanted to step out on the race car. They made some minor adjustments, and now he's jumped up to 4th fastest here on the car. He just brought it back in. They're on the jack stands. Ryan sits aboard the race car still with the helmet on, talking to Jeremy Bullins, who has his headset on. Jeremy is here sitting on a tire in front of the race car, and they're debriefing on the car. The car This is a beautiful race car. It's kind of a pearl red body armor paint scheme on this car. It is a beauty, that is for sure. A very rich red color on the bottom, white on the roof, white trim along the way. A really good looking race car. And thus far in this practice session, looking at Ryan Blaney, he has ran a total of 15 laps now after that last run, and he's still 4th on the speed chart. So I think they're finding their way here at Kansas pretty well, and as long as they can start finding their way on a regular basis, Ryan Blaney will start to become a more regular visitor to Gatorade Victory Lane.
With Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano both being champions for the captain, Roger Penske, both already getting to Victory Lane this year, Jeff, is there significant amount of pressure on the shoulders of Ryan Blaney?
Yeah. Why wouldn't there be? I think you got to go back. That pressure starts not beginning 2019 in Daytona. I think you got to go back and look at the whole body of work. What did we do last year? They won on the Roval. I'm not going to say they backed into it. They put themselves into position. They were running 3rd at the time when Jimmy and Truex got together coming to the stripe, and the winner was Ryan Blaney. I think any time, Dave, Moody, weigh in. Any time that you are in a garage with whether you have one teammate, you've got 2, or whether you've got 3 teammates, when your other teammates are winning and you're not, you put the pressure on yourself. I don't think anybody else has to do it for you.
I think, Dave's checking on that other story down there and in the garage. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Nobody's going to put more pressure on Ryan Blaney than Ryan Blaney. He has high expectations of himself. If he's being overachieved by anybody out there on the racetrack, much less his 2 teammates, he's not going to take that well. But this team Penske operation, they're very tight. They share absolutely everything, and Ryan Blaney is going to be in Victory Lane, I suspect, sooner than later. Also a little bit of a different look this weekend for his Team Penske teammate, Brad Keselowski, running the red, black, and white Worth colors on that Ford Mustang this weekend. As you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, a pretty decent jump last time out, up into the top 10, number 9. They put now 26 or 27 laps on that car, trying to get things figured out. And I hearken back to a conversation I had with his crew chief, Paul Wolf, just a couple of weeks ago, when he said to me, listen, we've got to win in the bank. We know we're going to the playoffs. This gives us an opportunity. It gives us maybe even a couple of months to try things that might be a little more aggressive than we would otherwise try. Now, let's be clear about this, because a lot of people think that when teams go into R&D mode, that they try stuff that they think isn't going to work. That's obviously not the case. They try things that they think might work, but they're not entirely sure. When you got a win or 2 in the bank, if it doesn't work and you finish 11th or 12th, well, okay, you're disappointed, but you haven't lost everything. So this team, I suspect, from time to time, is getting a little adventurous, trying some research and development, and seeing what works out there. The big payoff for R&D is when you find something that works spectacularly, you can ride that pony for a month or more before everybody else catches up.
All right, so fine, Alex. Okay, I get it. What Team Penske? But this is all I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you that Team Penske is doing what Dave just said and what you said a little while ago, and that is we will bring, now that we've won with 2 drivers, Logano and Brad, we may bring an R&D car to the track in order to try things to further develop our program. I get it, and I understand that, clearly. But I would have to, I just don't think I see that with the Truex, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin. I'm going to leave Erik Jones out of it. I can't speak to that. But I just do not see Truex, Hamlin, and Kyle Busch bringing R&D cars to the racetrack. Just my opinion. I could be wrong.
You could be.
Oh, you think I am? But Truex and Kyle do not win at the rate that they're winning when they're experimenting with race cars.
But here's the beautiful thing about it is there's no exact formula to win races, to win a championship. We know the formula that was used last year for Joey Logano and Team Penske. We know it, and they now believe that that's the way to do it because it was successful. We know prior to that, the formula that Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. used at Furniture Row Racing is go out, lead as many laps as we can, get as many stage points as we can, and basically point our way straight in there and then go whoop them up at Ford Championship Weekend in Homestead. That worked for them. There are different schools of thought based on the success or lack of success that you have.
And I guess I would also add this, and that is when we talk about R&D, it may be that Paul Wolfe or Todd Gordon is bringing one minute little change to that Ford Mustang. I mean, obviously, we all recognize, anybody that follows this sport as closely as you do, our loyal listeners, and is what we do, recognize that you can't throw the kitchen sink at your car and bring something that is so R&D'd up that you'd never pass tech. Well, we all get that. So all they really can do is a small, minute change. But for a crew chief, to them, anytime you're not doing exactly what we've always done, that's R&D.
But that's also when you fall behind. You've got to constantly evolve. You have to constantly change. And believe me, if it's a minor thing that they're trying at Team Penske, believe me, they just didn't go out on the street out in North Carolina and find some goober named Brian and say, what are you going to put on this race car? What would you do? No, they've got a team of engineers that are working tirelessly to come up with newer, better, faster ways to get their cars around these racetracks.
No goobers named Brian on my car, ever. Go.
Brad Keselowski, Aric Almirola, Alex Bowman, Clint Boyer, and Kevin Harvick. That's your Fast Five right now here in the opening practice of the day and of the weekend for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, getting ready for the Digital Ally 400 for tomorrow night for the Cup Series. Talking and with all the race fans and visiting with them and watching the Twitter feeds on who they think will be in the championship four, none of them so far, none of them have mentioned any Stewart-Haas Racing drivers. We'll talk a little bit more about Stewart-Haas Racing in a moment. From Kansas Speedway, this is the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
2019 is the Motor Racing Network's 50th year, and things are about to get a lot louder. I'm Woody Kane. The NASCAR season is revving its engine, and MRN's two biggest loudspeakers are back when race spotter Joey Meyer and I bring you the latest news, results, and headlines every Monday on MRN Out Loud. Crank it up Mondays on MRN.com, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are heard.
Check out MRN.com for a new podcast series called The Tough Trucks of NASCAR. 25 years and still trucking. We'll take you back to some great races.
Benson to the bottom of the racetrack. This is the race for the lead and the win at Michigan.
And some wild moments.
One truck is in the air. Matt Crafton upside down.
And we'll let you hear the stories behind them.
He was too bullheaded to let me pass him, and I was too bullheaded to let him have it.
Download the show for free on iTunes and at MRN.com. From the Sunflower State of Kansas, this is Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice.
One final shot for Truex. Harvick goes to the top in 3. Truex goes to the bottom. They race for the win off the corner.
Exiting turn number 4, Kevin Harvick. He's got 2 car lengths on Martin Truex Jr. Checkered flag in the air, and for the 5th time this year, Kevin Harvick wins in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series.
Now, back to Jeff Striegel and Alex Hayden.
5 wins by this weekend 1 year ago for Kevin Harvick, and he's yet to bust into the W column here in 2019. Is there a reason to panic if you're a Kevin Harvick fan right now?
Well, I think that panic, no. Concern, absolutely. You're falling behind. We've proven that out now for 11 races, that the cars that you're bringing to the racetrack out of that organization are not as fast as those of Joe Gibbs Racing and Team Penske, and obviously you can throw Chase Elliott in there with his win as well. So I don't know that it's panic, but I certainly think it's cause for concern. But maybe that concern can be put to rest here, Steve, this week. When you take a look at Kevin Harvick, if you're going to come to a track where you can fix what's wrong, maybe Kansas isn't a bad place to go. They won both stages here. Actually, they finished second in stage 1, second in stage 2 Then they won the race here 1 year ago, leading 79 laps. They got to get a W in the win column here pretty quick, don't they?
Well, you would think they'd certainly want to do it. And when you look at it, he's had a little inconsistency problem there when you factor in Talladega where he finished 38, but the rest of the races have all been top 13. He's got a couple of fourth-place finishes here between Richmond and Dover, so they've been good. They've just not been Harvick, Rodney Childers good, what we've been used to seeing, and I think that's what they're looking for, that little nth degree of where they're up front, leading stages and winning and leading laps along the way, and I think that's what they're looking for, and hey, maybe we found it here at Kansas. They're pretty happy with the race car. He's on a long run right now, just trying to get accustomed to what the balance of the car is over the course of a run. A little bit harder tire that we have this week, and they're still trying to learn that as well. So that's where Harvick is. He's on about 35, 36 laps at this point. Not on this run. It's just probably a 20-lap run that he's looking at. He's ran a couple of shorter runs prior to that. But prior to this last run, they were feeling that the car was just a little bit loose, but now Kevin's reporting that it's pretty good, and he feels pretty good during this longer run. So, yeah, Harvick needs to get to the win column, but it's not like he's fighting from 32nd spot on a regular basis. He's been close a number of times this year, and they just need the right things to happen, and maybe one of the right things is coming to a racetrack like here at Kansas. You talk about he won here last year, but he's a 3-time winner overall at this racetrack, so he certainly knows the key and what he's looking for. And right now, the sense in this garage area down here with Kevin, with the Busch Beer colors on the crew uniforms, the Busch Beer colors on the race car, they feel pretty confident in what they have thus far in this practice session here with about 9 minutes remaining here this morning at Kansas.
36 laps Kevin Harvick's put on the board here in this opening practice session. Has him in a single lap speed in the 4th position. As a matter of fact, he has joined another one of his Stewart-Haas Racing teammates inside the top 5. Aric Almirola currently is 3rd, and Almirola has finished in the top 10 in 8 races in his last 8 races on mile-and-a-half racetracks. So Aric Almirola, Clint Boyer, and even Daniel Suarez, Dave Moody, those drivers rounding out the 4 cars at Stewart-Haas Racing all have speed in their cars, but yet to really put together a solid race from start to finish.
Well, that's exactly right, Alex, and one of them just pulling back out onto the racetrack right now. That's the Aric Almirola machine flying the Smithfield colors again here this weekend in Kansas. And to steal a phrase from our former MRN colleague, the late Dick Brooks, a lot of happy people down here. Aric Almirola in the top 5 on the speed charts, in the top 5 for 10-lap average as well, which may be more important at the end of the day. Just some fine-tuning adjustments going on here just a couple of moments ago. About 3/4 of a round down on one of the jack screws in the rear window, and they were doing a little bit of fine-tuning on the right side rocker panel where they had grounded off. It comes into contact with the racetrack during a run. They are taking off just a 1/4 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch or so off the very back of that right side rocker panel to prevent it from making contact with the racetrack. So very minor adjustments right now, and a pretty happy race team down here for Aric Almirola.
So do you have SHR cars on their way to Ford Championship Weekend, Homestead, Miami? It's time to put your 4 together, because we're going to revisit ours, or visit ours, I guess, for the very first time. Weigh in, if you would, on Twitter at MRN Radio, hashtag AskMRN. What 4 cars, if you had to put money down on them right now, would be racing for a championship in November? Moody and Postman set to reveal theirs. Alex and I will do that also after the break. From Kansas Speedway, this is the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
You hear it every week.
Just want to thank the whole team and all our guys back in Denver. Everybody supports this team.
They're the unsung heroes of NASCAR, and their life is the pits. This is Rocco Williams, and for 10 years, I've jacked up some of the biggest names in auto racing, and now I'm jacked to bring it all down to street level and acquaint you with the guys behind the wall and back at the shop. Join me on MRN Crew Call, presented by Money Lion, every Wednesday on MRN.com, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found.
Before you know it, we'll be crowning the 2019 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup champion in Miami. You need to be there to witness Ford Championship Weekend, November 15th through the 17th at Homestead Miami Speedway. 3 days, 3 races, 3 NASCAR champions.
What a year for Joey Logano, and he caps it off with a win at Homestead Miami Speedway.
Pick out the best seats in the house for the pinnacle race of the 2019 NASCAR season in South Florida. Call 866-409-7223. That's 866-409-RACE.
From Kansas Speedway, this is Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice.
Just over 5 minutes remain in this, the first of two practice that we have here for the Cup Series. We'll give you the complete schedule before we go off the air. Ford Championship weekend, granted, a long ways away. However, we are now a third of the way through the 2019 season already, and I want to reference one very, very intelligent response on Twitter at MRN Radio, hashtag AskMRN. Goes by @BrianRuther17. Now he says his four will be Truex, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano. Are you listening to me?
I am.
And Chase Elliott. I think that is very, very good.
Because
those are the four, and I went through all of them looking to see if anybody had a match, and he is the only one that I saw that had a match. I'll tell you what, I really struggled with that number 4. I had no issue with Truex, slam dunk. No issue with Kyle Busch, slam dunk. Third, Logano, I debated a little bit between himself and Brad, but I went with a 22. And then it came down to Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin. But I ended up thinking to myself that Chase Elliott, who has now won 4 races out of the last 26, to me, if you can put that together over the course of 2019, is a championship opportunity run. He's yet to do it, obviously, but those are my 4: Truex, Kyle Busch, Logano, and Chase Elliott. Do you want to go or do you want to wait?
You know what? I'll go, but I'm going to read one of these fans who's chimed in, as we've been asking them to do, because they've taken their time and written out some very well thought out things.
Sure.
Tucker Riley Rhodes at Tuckbite says his 4: 1, Kyle Busch. I mean, how can you not pick him? That's according to Tucker. Number 2, Joey Logano. Early in the season, he seems to be the most consistent Penske driver. Number 3, Kevin Harvick. Hasn't won, but I'm confident by the time he will, and he's been consistent. Number 4, Kurt Busch. His consistency will serve him well. I also think he'll win before the regular season is done. Nice tweet there, nice response, Tucker, at Tuckbite. Give him a follow there. I, too, have 4. Now, and I'm going to prelude all of mine with, we're a third of the way through the season. I have no idea, realistically. We got a long way to go and a lot of miles to race before we get there. And if I knew the 4 that were going to be there, believe me, I wouldn't be sitting up here in a booth with you. I would be out at the casinos winning lots of money, being able to see ahead of the time. Might even be over at the Hollywood Casino right up off turn 2 right now. But the 4 I would have, based off of what I've seen and what I've talked to folks in the garage every week of this season, Martin Truex Jr. would be there because I like what they're doing. Their tried and true formula will get them, in my opinion, the Final 4. Joey Logano. I think he, Todd Gordon, they have a fantastic season going, and their formula, they're sticking to their plan that won them a championship a year ago. Believe it or not, my last 2 I kind of struggled with as well. But I honestly believe Denny Hamlin will be part of the championship 4 because things just seem to be going Denny Hamlin's way. He's had many, as he does every year, pit road problems, whether it's speeding or crew problems down there. But if you look at the results after his pit road incidents this year, he's bounced back with top 5s and top 10s. So to me, that's a little good Mugambo going for Denny Hamlin there. My 4th one is Kyle Larson. And the reason I say Kyle Larson with 2 minutes left in this practice session is the fact that sometimes when somebody jumps up and has a spectacular end to their season, you look back and go, you know, they overcame a lot of adversity. And that's what's going on with Kyle Larson. For whatever reason, he made Lady Luck mad to start this 2019 season off. After last week, he finally had a solid run, finished 3rd at Dover a week ago. I think Kyle Larson's going to be that story. We look back and say, man, oh man, did he and that team overcome adversity.
Well, I mean, I like the way that you painted that picture, and I agree with you. If he is going to get there, they've got a lot of work to do, but they have the speed, the team, the driver that could get him there. He is on the racetrack right now in a pack of cars that are experimenting in the draft here at Kansas for the very first time with this new rules package. And I'll tell you right now, I like what I see. Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Logano, Chris Buescher, Ryan Blaney, Paul Menard, Denny Hamlin, and 4 or 5 other cars are all working in a huge pack. And if we race like this on Saturday night, I think we're all in store for something special. Postman, it is your time. What do you think? Have you been able to put 4 numbers down on a piece of paper that you believe in?
Well, I was doing really good until Alex mentioned Mugambo, and I thought about that meal we had last night at the Cajun restaurant. That gumbo over there was fantastic. So, but other than that, yes, I have 4 numbers written down here, and it's been fun because I wrote them down about halfway through this practice session. I have Martin Truex Jr. down because, well, the last 3 weeks he's doing Martin Truex Jr. kind of stuff, leading a lot of laps and just really putting the stranglehold on the team. Okay, I have Joey Logano on because, well, he's doing Joey Logano kind of stuff. Got to win early, and it certainly worked for him last year, so I like Joey Logano. I just never think you can bet against the experience of a Rodney Childers and a Kevin Harvick. So I think Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers and that Stewart-Haas team goes there. And last week I had a conversation that really makes me lean toward Chase Elliott. The conversation is with Alan Gustafson, crew chief for Chase Elliott. And we were just talking about big picture stuff. And I said, so overall, where is the Hendrick camp? And his answer, trending in the right direction. Well, as we've talked about, and as Dave mentioned, they don't give away the championship trophy here in May. It's the end of the year, and if the Hendrick camp is trending in the right direction, there's going to be a Hendrick car, so I've got Chase Elliott. So my 4, Martin Truex Jr., Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, and Chase Elliott.
Dave Moody, what say you?
Well, I have no idea what Mugambo even is, but I know what I'm looking for in a good, solid Final Four, and that's a couple of things. The consistency to avoid putting yourself in a hole in the final rounds of the playoffs by having a bad day, and the ability to win at any time to drag yourself out of a hole if you happen to get in one. So with that said, here's my Money in the Bank Final Four that you can I bet every penny that Jeff Striegel has on this one. Kyle Busch for all the obvious reasons. I think Joey Logano, for all the obvious reasons as well. Defending series champion. The mojo's sky high. They're just that close every single week. Martin Truex Jr., I think, is right where he needs to be right now, and we've seen that team get on a roll and just knock off top 5 to top 7 finishes week after week after week, and I see him doing that again. And I just can't fill out my Final Four without putting Kevin Harvick's name in there somewhere. I know they're not winning yet. They're coming awfully close. I think they will. I think they'll win, and they'll win often, and I think they'll go to Homestead with a shot at the title.
That's Dave Moody. He is joined down there in the garage area by the postman, Steve Post. We're going to let them go. We are not done. Here's what I find interesting. We have 2 drivers that we all agree on, one Ford, one Toyota, one being Truex and one being last year's champion in Joey Logano. I find it interesting, very interesting, that both you and Post have elected to not put the 18 of Kyle Busch into your championship 4. I find that very interesting. That's all I'm going to say. What do you got?
Well, Kyle Busch doesn't like this package. He's very adamant about that. To me, you got to be on board with it. You got to be on board with it every single week. He's very vocal. He's not on board with this, and to me, that can spell some disaster.
You think he's defeated before he gets there? To a degree.
Potentially.
To a degree.
But it is Kyle Busch, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not only in a Final Four, potentially champion.
We've got 2 votes for Kevin Harvick, Steve and Dave taking Harvick. We've got 2 votes for Chase Elliott, Steve and I electing to go with the 9 car, and then a single vote for both Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. So if you were to run across the property over to the Hollywood Casino, the 2 odds-on favorites here in race number 11 would be the 19 of Truex and the 22 of Logano.
A lot of fun. We have another practice session still to go. By the way, thanks again for joining us on NASCAR.com and MRN.com for all of today's practice coverage. Our coverage day has just begun, however. Here's a look of what we have on tap for the rest of the day. Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series final practice coverage starts on MRN.com at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Fox Sports 1's FS1's practice coverage begins at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. The NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series qualifying coverage on FS1 starts at 5 p.m. Eastern Time today. And then Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series qualifying Coverage begins on MRN.com and FS1 at 7 p.m. Eastern. Race coverage of the Digital Ally 250 from Kansas Speedway for the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series on Motor Racing Network, live flag-to-flag coverage, also on FS1. That starts on both networks at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
So if you would like to weigh in, that Championship 4 debate will continue in our happy hour practice coming up in 1 hour. Who do you think will be the 4 drivers now 1/3 of the way through the 2019 season that will be competing for a championship in November? All you've got to do is go to the Motor Racing Network Twitter feed, which is at MRN Radio. Use the hashtag AskMRN and give us the 4 numbers that you think will be racing for a championship when we get there. Session number 1 down, happy hour coming up, a completely different agenda now.
Yeah, it is. You got one last chance to get your car dialed in exactly the way you need to have it dialed in. Again, we're back with you live here on the Motor Racing Network for final practice for the Cup Series, and that'll be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time here today. Don't forget, Motor Racing Network again tonight for the Digital Ally 250. MRN's live airtime is 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight.
For Steve Post and Dave Moody down in the garage area, and Alex Hayden, my broadcast partner, my name is Jeff Striegel. We're only going to be gone for 60 minutes. We're back in 1 hour, happy hour, coming up next on the Motor Racing Network.
Motor Racing Network's coverage of NASCAR practice has come to you from Kansas Speedway. Today's broadcast was brought to you under an exclusive radio license granted by Kansas Speedway to the Motor Racing Network, solely for the private non-commercial use of our listening audience. Any use of the description and accounts of this event without the express written consent of the Motor Racing Network is prohibited. Follow all the NASCAR action at MRN.com. This broadcast has been a production of the Motor Racing Network.